Hello.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
Hey. Should we start or are we waiting for, should we wait for some more time? Okay.
We have a pretty full agenda actually. Are folks online? I see Davis, see Max. Can y'all hear us?
No, I can't.
Okay. All right, let's get going. We have pretty a lot of stuff on the agenda actually. Nilik, you want to go?
Yep. So this is regarding the onboarding that we want to do on the Artifact Hub. So I opened an issue with Artifact maintainers and I've been working with them. So I think two things I just wanted to sort of highlight and want everybody's opinion on. So the first thing is about the directory structure. And I think if you open that issue, right, so we have been discussing few things about how the directory structures can be. So one thing that came out of that is about the README files. So I asked them, like, we already have README files as a part of our website that we just merged. So can we reuse them? And they came up with a suggestion where they are saying that uh, since we are using sort of HTML tags and all in our README files in order to collapse some of the examples, etc., uh, that is not supported on Artifact Hub portal. So what they're suggesting is like we can just have so they have something called as a YAML file per package, and it's their metadata file, and that metadata has something called as a description field and a README field. So if we can populate that instead of using just having a README, then it would be great. And also for examples, they have something called as a specialized view where they can render some of the examples. So for example, if you go on Artifact Hub and if you try to see the Helm package or Helm repo, right? It has something called as templates. So if you click on templates, you'll get all the Helm templates on there. So similarly, they could do something similar for us where we can probably say, here is our constraint template, here is our constraint and other examples like allowed and disallowed example. So I think one of the maintainer, Sergio, I guess, he's going to create like a sample repo. So hopefully tomorrow or maybe this week, we'll get to see how that looks like. And maybe we can take the directory structure thing from there. Does that sound good? Cool. The other thing I wanted to
That's a lot of information. I would need to
right,
like look at it. To,
definitely.
Yeah, I also would like to see a sample for that one to understand.
And that's exactly what Sergio is going to create for us probably. And I've seen him creating the same thing for the other new kinds as well. So he'll probably just create on his own repos and will show us how it looks like. And probably he'll do that in a staging artifact repo so that we can actually go ahead and check. So once that is there, it will be more like a visual information and we can sort of look at it basically.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe we do want to insulate our repo structure from whatever their requirements are too.
Right. Exactly. And that is something I wanted to check because earlier we were talking about, how we can reorganize or we don't need perhaps the reorganization of our structure. But it looks like for to onboard the Artifact Hub, we will probably end up adding some Artifact Hub specific things in the repo structure. So I guess once we have that sample in there, we can further have this discussion as to how we want to actually do it. Like, do we want to do it in our existing directory structure? Or perhaps what I was thinking is like maybe having a directory structure dedicated for Artifact Hub. But it might end up duplicating a lot of stuff. But yeah, I want to defer this conversation probably until we have that sample things up, so then we will have something to look at and get a reference.
Yeah, and my preference would be to have whatever for Artifact Hub be downstream of whatever we're building as our like main source of truth, just so that we're not taking them as a dependency that then like bites us if we discover we need something else in the future that looks different.
Makes sense. Yep. Cool. Yeah, and probably the second thing that I just wanted to check is like one of the things that we were discussing earlier is versioning, and we have yet to sort of finalize how we want to do the versioning and all. But for the Artifact Hub, we do need to have a versioning. We can't go ahead without versioning. That's one of the question I asked them. So I was just curious, what should be like our beginner version, I guess. Like I was thinking 010, we can just start with 010 to all the, for all the policies, we can have this version. And once we finalized in the greater scope of CLI and other stuff that we are thinking, we can probably at some point in time do 100 version and then, increment from there. But I'm just curious what other things.
Is this
Any thoughts?
versioning per template?
Per template, per policy.
That includes the
muted,
constraint
Max.
or not? Oh, Max, are you saying something? You're muted.
I was muted. Sorry. What happens if a constraint template changes and we haven't adopted a versioning scheme yet? Are we just clobbering 010 at that point, as presented on Artifact Hub?
Right. So, and I think that's what probably we need some time to sort of decide how we want to do the versioning, right? Like, do we want to cut a new version if the template changes, etc. So this would be sort of a placeholder versioning for Artifact Hub, but we might as well align with our longer term versioning. So I mean, so to begin with, I think we need to have some kind of a versioning so that we can onboard on Artifact Hub, and once we land on our gatekeeper specific versioning, we can just increment it from there.
How does Artifact Hub does versioning? Like, does it save the old versions? Because we
No,
don't
it
have any
doesn't.
tags or anything like that in the
Correct.
repo.
Correct. It doesn't. So the way it works is, again, and this goes back to the directory structure. So each version will have their own directory structure. So
I
for
see.
example, we have HTTPS only policy, let's say. Within that directory, we will have, let's say, 010 directory with the policy and all the artifacts in it. Then we'll have probably, let's say, 100 and all the artifacts.
Okay, so that will
In
require change in directory structure. Like I see.
correct, exactly. And then what Artifact Hub does is they have this generic tracker. So once we are onboarded, they will keep sort of looking into this GitHub repo that we have sort of registered. And then it will keep on looking for the newer version for that particular policy. So we don't have to do anything on the Artifact Hub side per se. We can just create a new directory for the newer version, and it should automatically show up on the Artifact Hub on their next run.
Makes sense. I mean, I think then if you're adding on our side, then we can just do like a version 1.0 or something like that for most of the policies, right?
Correct. But my opinion is like, I want to hold off doing 100 until we know for sure that this is going to be our versioning scheme, just to have that semantic in place where we are still sort of finalizing, and this might not be the production ready version per se. And once we aligned on the version policy, then do 100.
It's the Semver
Just
version of.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, we can
Like,
do.
yeah, because we have it on our repo, that's basically makes production ready, right? Like because if we went with the 001, that might confuse users for like, hey, I've been using these, are they not good or something like that?
Interesting. Yeah.
I mean, the problem here, I think, is we're sort of had the cart before the horse, right? We don't have something that we want for a versioning scheme. If we want to be on Artifact Hub, we're forced to at least declare a version, right? If we declare a version, Gatekeeper 3 is a good example of this, right? Where we indicate something, but then we're kind of like stuck with it, right? And there's like unintended impacts down the line. So, in some ways, it's, to my mind, yes, it's real weird to have the 010. It's in terms of like, what is that actually signaling if I'm a user coming in? It's also a little weird just from the concept of versioning to be like clobbering the existing version, right? Like even in Semver, if you were like 0 dot, you still do increment, right? So, but the only other option would be to like not be on Artifact Hub until we figure out how we want to like do this versioning thing and how that would interact with Artifact Hub. I'm not saying that's a bad choice necessarily. It might not actually take all that long to figure out the versioning story. But unless we do that, we're forced into some kind of trade-off here.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about the same. I think Sartaj's point is kind of valid because a lot of folks are using this probably in production. So sort of tagging them non-production or zero something, it might be a mixed signaling. So I think potentially once we have this sample directory structure in place by those maintainers, we can work on both things probably. Like let's figure it out how the versioning and perhaps our CLI story, how it's gonna look like, and then probably tackle both. That can be an option.
Yeah, like I don't think we need the full CLI story even to understand what the versioning, what information the versioning needs to
Sure.
convey. We just
Sure.
need to, yeah.
Yeah, I was just kind of thinking like just from the forward thinking perspective, like because if something that I don't know, like basically just having the CLI at the back of our mind mostly
Yeah.
when we figure out versioning.
Yeah, yeah. And I think a lot of this is going to come from just user empathy, right? Like, what am I looking for in a versioning scheme? What are the tasks that where it becomes salient, right? Like, what can it enable? And just make sure we have enough information density to back up those stories.
Okay. Does that make sense? Anybody has any thoughts on it?
I mean, it sounds like what you're saying is wait and see what they're going to show us, and then once
Right.
we have something concrete, then start the concrete thinking around
Sure.
it.
I think they'll force us to think about the versioning and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, but I think Nilik's point is without this being established, you can't even onboard. Is that what you're saying? You
Yes.
can't like start, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, without like I think he was saying like we could onboard with like the 010 version and just kind of take that as a null version or something, right? And
I think that can be Nilex fork. Is that right, Nilex?
So I mean, I think that the thing is, so there is like two parts while onboarding on Artifact Hub. First, they have to create a new kind, and I think with that new kind, it just knows how to render or how to basically track for a kind which is gatekeeper. Once that is there, anybody can onboard any repo, for example. So I can onboard my fork as well, probably, and I can onboard the actual gatekeeper repo as well. And with similar thought, anybody can add their own gatekeeper policy from their own GitHub repository as well.
I mean, it's almost sounds like, so if we have this, right, and people start using templates, like putting them on, sorry, they start using that category and putting them on Artifact Hub, I mean, we're kind of de facto pushed into having a specific versioning scheme for templates, right? Like if people start using what Artifact Hub provides, right, then there's a standard there that's already has at least some alignment with it.
Correct.
So if we like it, that's not a bad thing, but
Right. Yeah, and that is something probably we will be setting up when we are creating this new kind. We will be telling Artifact Hub and effectively everybody that this is the directory structure that should be there in your repo if you want to publish your own policy on Artifact Hub. And there is also a concept of an ownership or the official label on the repo. So all the gatekeeper library repo, we can say that these are the official repos, or the or these are policies are owned by the gatekeeper library repo per se. So we can do that as well. So it's easier for people to identify who is the actual owner of it, and probably most of the gatekeeper folks in the community will know that we already have this library repo, and this is the owner. That means this can be like the most trusted repos, I guess.
Yeah, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, we should definitely at least have an opinion about versioning. Otherwise, it will just happen to us.
Right.
Maybe for the next call, can we have like a proposal for how we're gonna do the versioning on the library? And then
Yeah.
have it be the source of, what shows up in Artifact Hub.
Yep. So I was thinking of the same. So once we have that sample directory structure and everything is up, I'll probably try to put together a proposal for the versioning and probably the directory structure for Artifact Hub both, and then, or maybe just proposal for Artifact Hub, I guess, which will have everything, and then we all can review it.
I have a thought for versioning structure that just popped into my head. If we follow semver, the leading digit could be associated with the version of the kind, right? So like every kind has an implicit v1 after it, and then if we have like K8s required labels v2, right? There's an explicit v2 for the kind, and then the major version would be if we've added a new field, say, right? So it's still backwards compatible, but there's something of significant interest. And then minor version would be pure like Rego changes that are not meant to really affect. Like you should be able to just upgrade the template and not have to worry about the constraints at all. I don't know if it bears out, but maybe.
So like say a parameter, like needing like a new parameter or something, that would be a major update,
That would be a minor update.
minor update. Okay. So what would be a major update?
If we, for instance, changed a parameter in a backwards incompatible way, right? Such that we created a new kind even, right? So this is it. We're kind of like duplicating where these versions are showing up, but at least then you get some consistency in like, hey, I want K8s required labels. What's the history of K8s required labels, right? You'd be able to correlate that if you're looking at semver or kinds.
So a major update would actually be like a new CRD.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, we actually had this before, right? The seccomp one.
Yeah.
I think we didn't know what we were doing, so that the first one was wrong, and then we updated it, but that was a breaking change, and then we called it seccomp v2 or something like that.
Yeah.
Is this why do I remember this? Hold on.
It's under PSP somewhere.
Okay.
I'm impressed. I knew we did it at least
Yeah.
once, but I had completely forgotten.
It's under PSP.
Yeah, it's a seccomp v2 or something. I just saw it from the website, the library website.
Okay.
So I guess like my point is we also need to do this in the library website though. So we'll also have to like say, hey, this is version 2 or version 1 or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And we would need to like annotate the templates if we had these more detailed version sets. Like, yeah, just to get that pattern out there. I don't know if Artifact Hub lets us like lint the things people are putting in to be sure that that version info is there. But it's good to have it on the resource itself so that when it's on the cluster, you still have that context.
Are you talking about SE Linux V2?
Yeah, one of them. Yeah, I thought it was seccomp, but it might be SE Linux.
Got it. Hey, the library, the website is so much easier to discover this. Yay, good job.
Yeah, I added to the top of the agenda. That one is up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yay.
I couldn't find it. It was really hard to see on GitHub, but on the website, it's like, oh, it's right there. Nice.
But yeah, so now we'll have to add the versioning there too. So we have to think about that, like how do we surface versioning in our website?
Right, right. Yeah. I think the most important thing if we're engaging with this artifact hub thing is to model things there, because if they're taking submissions and are meant to sort of guide, if people are designing their repos against the requirements there, right, that's a pretty strong forcing function for uniformity. Probably the other strongest forcing function being how we organize our own stuff, right? Because people tend to just take the pattern.
Yeah, creating new kind will enforce those things, definitely. So we will be effectively setting standards.
Okay. Yeah, and it's worth thinking about. I'm not necessarily in love with that versioning scheme. It just seemed pretty natural to me. But we could think about if also like the use cases of things we want to express, right? Like if I had a constraint and it didn't have a template associated with it, for instance, I definitely, well, you'll get the like major version because of the kind of the constraint. But then if there's like some low watermark where you must be at least at this major version or minor version, sorry, must be at least this minor version or this patch version, right? You'd be able to express that. So you could start to unblock some of these like dependency resolution paths.
Interesting. Okay.
So really each major, if we're going through like folder structures, each major version would have one constraint template. And
well, it could, if you had a bunch of minor versions, right? Like, so let's use the putative folder structure that Artifact Hub is proposing, right? Where I understand it as like a bunch of sibling folders under, like you have K8s required labels, and under that you have like v0.1, v0.2, v0.3, and then patch versions still may, so 0.1, 0.0.1, 0.0.2, blah, 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 blah. So you could wind up with an infinite number of templates under a specific kind, but you just will only ever have the one major version under that kind. Right. And if you increment the major version, new folder.
Yeah.
Okay. I think let's discuss this more in the proposal doc.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, cool. Yeah, and probably lastly, yeah, the library website is live, and I also opened a PR to update the reference in our Gatekeeper website. So take a look when you get a chance. That's it from me.
Okay. Next item, I linked to the generator PR. I think that Davis has, I think there's like a pending discussion around the user experience. Do y'all want to talk about it now or?
Sure.
Let's see. So if you click on that link, basically today there's like a prefix to the message that's returned in the in the admission response. It basically says mock resource created from the parent resource, and then like what the violation is, right? So I think there were some proposals from Davis and Max around, do we want to say something like, what did you say? Implied by X, where X is the expansion template, right?
The name
Right.
of the extension.
The name of the expansion template. I think I'm okay with that. I think I'm just like I just want to be careful here because none of this makes sense to the end user who's
Yeah.
deploying the resource. They're going to be like, what does that even mean? Generated by something else. It's like, what does that mean?
Generated for sure. I think implied by, if you're careful with how you name your templates, like the example of deployments create pods, that's kind of self-documenting. I don't think we can, like, as a framework, be perfectly self-documenting here, though. I think we can only make it possible to be.
Is there a specific language Kubernetes calls this? I know it calls the upper level resources workloads.
Yeah, I've not. Yeah, so there is this idea of workloads for sure that's specific to pods, but generator stuff itself is not necessarily
Right.
just pods. So we can't use those words. I think I don't think I coined the term generator back in the day. I think I copied that from somewhere else, but I might be wrong. Yeah, anyone else think of any name for like a resource that implies other resources? Like, I think I've heard like application, right? Where if you had an operator, right, that was used to install a product, right? Like, did they have a term maybe for the resource that gave the instructions to install the thing? And I think I've
I guess to your point, like I think the person who's deploying this knows what was the thing that actually deployed this violating resource, right? So maybe it's not as important to include that in the error message.
Yeah, so the reason why we at least need that context, right, is if a user says, no, this error is nonsense, right, and they kick it up to an admin, right, the admin's going to look at this error and go, like, I don't understand. This is coming from a constraint that's like supposed to apply to pods. What's going on here? And so they wouldn't have that traceability. Right. And to the extent that if people want to use different expansion templates per namespace, because, for example, they're doing different enforcement action overrides depending on the namespace or whatever, then, you know, it's not even going to be clear. It's not like they only have one expansion template that goes from deployments to pods. Right. So, you know, it's not that you couldn't figure it out, but it's going to be like hunt and peck debugging, I think. Yeah, so that's the major benefit of the context, with a minor benefit of it might, if the constraint error is, I don't know if it's poorly written, but if it doesn't provide, if the wording of the error doesn't make sense for the type of resource you're creating, right? Because the sub resource like looks different enough, I could see that being confusing as well, right? So having this implied by might give the admin some wiggle room to make that a bit more self-documenting. That's a bit more speculative, but that would be the cluster consumer's benefit.
I'm okay with this for now, since I can't think of anything better. And I think this is better, like the proposed terminology is better than what we have currently. So yeah, I'm okay with that. So I think that's the last remaining thing for this PR. Is there anything else?
I think for this PR, that's it. Separately, there's a docs change PR, and then I have another
Alright.
PR that I'll follow up after this one.
The docs one, I actually tried the mutation one, the sign example that you had, it did not work for me. I don't know why.
Okay, I'll
So
look
if-
at that. That's not good.
Yeah, like hopefully it's just something, you know, insignificant, but if it is actually a bug, then we do want, it might be like a blocking thing for this PR.
You tried it with the PR code.
I tried
You're
with
saying.
the PR code using the example in the document PR.
Gotcha.
Yeah, when I initially tried, it didn't work for me too, but I had other issues too at the time. This was like a long time ago.
Anyway, that's just something to follow up on. I might not be that. Hopefully, it's not a big bug.
Okay,
Famous
the
last one.
assign mutation you're saying did not work?
Yes. Like I was
Okay,
expecting the image pull policy to be always, and they never got updated.
Oh, wait, did we talk about this one? Was this one the one where the mutator has the source generated as opposed to like source original on it?
Yes, currently it's generated.
Okay, yeah, I think we talked about this one, that might have just been, maybe we need to like document better because it's not expected that mutator mutate the actual object, right? The point of source generated was to, yeah.
So if I check the cluster resource, it wouldn't have that because it's not actually mutating the actual.
Right.
Okay, yeah,
Right.
that's definitely not clear. And this is what Sertaj was saying, because I think when he tried it last time, we were like, yeah, that shouldn't work because that's not expected to work. But then the current documentation makes it sound like that should work, which actually confused me.
Right. Yeah. This is for like, you have some other mutation webhook that's actually doing that work and you just want to mock it out for.
Yes. So that's the
Yeah.
other thing is, like, I know this is how we reuse mutation for this feature, but it's, you know, if you're not familiar with Gatekeeper, you coming in and you're testing out or looking at this feature, it may not make sense that, like, why is mutation involved in any of this?
Right.
And you might mistakenly think like, oh, maybe this just works for mutation in a similar manner, which is totally not the case.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we should
that's a
definitely
fair point.
update that doc.
Yeah, I'll go through those docs and make that point more clear.
Okay, maybe like even like a warning thing. This is not for mutation actually. It's for the.
Sorry, good.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, like maybe the thing to do is to have a concrete example, right? Like, hey, you have, I don't know, something that injects an Istio sidecar, and you have a policy that's looking for an Istio sidecar, and your constraint is failing. You have two options, right? You can either disable that constraint for the generated check, right? And show source generated there. Or you can add a mutator that like mocks what the injected sidecar would look like, and only apply that for the generated object. And so sort of two ways of, if you prefer to keep the policy there and mock the mutation, or just ignore that policy because you know it's not going to cause problems downstream anyway.
Well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, like I almost feel like because this is user facing doc, like the details as far as like how mutation is used and how the pod will look when it's expanded, like I almost feel like that's almost an implementation detail. As a user, I only really just care that I deploy this deployment or replica set or whatever, and with this assign, the end result is the pod is blocked, right? Like that, I think that's what we should show. I think I think how the pod is produced, how the expanded pod actually ends up as, I think it's sort of an implementation detail that by adding it is actually confusing people.
I think I agree with you. I think we're kind of like saying the same things in different angles.
Okay.
Right? Like I was saying we should like come up with an example of a practical admission-based problem.
Yes. Yes.
That you could solve either by disabling the constraint that's causing the problem or by adding this extra mutation. And also show why you would want a mutation to only like be there for this case by saying, in this example, the problem is there's another mutating webhook that's causing issues. And we could find an actual common webhook. Like I keep going to Istio, but if there's a easier mutation webhook or a more common one people are aware of.
I mean, I think this particular example is also kind of confusing because it's like, why would I create an assign mutator that changes the image pull policy, right? If I'm just like trying to block the pot,
Pod security standards does not mutate, right?
does not mutate. No,
Or pod security admissions, sorry.
it does not mutate. No.
Okay, so yeah, PSP would have done this. Like you could have been mocking out PSP, but that's a pretty antiquated idea at this point.
Right, but as a user, all I need is the expansion template. That's all I need, and then the constraint template, right? Like, I don't need the sign. I don't need to create the sign resource, right?
So what would happen, right? So let's pretend you are using PSP, right, for some weird reason, and you have it setting image pull policy to always. I forget if that's a thing PSP does. Okay, you have some mutation webhook that's setting image pull policy to always, right? You have your homegrown, internally built webhook that does that. And you decide, like, okay, I have these other, I have this gatekeeper policy, right? That's requiring image pull policy always also, just to like double check, because you're supposed to, not just rely on mutation. And now you want to enable this, the expansion feature because you want to fail deployments early, right? What it's intended for. Before, what would happen is if someone had an otherwise compliant deployment that didn't set image pull policy properly, your mutation webhook would have made everything copacetic, right? And so the deployment looks wrong, but the final pods it creates would have been fine, right? And would have passed policy, right? So what happens then is you just can't enable the fail fast feature we're trying to enable, right? Because you're like over rejecting now, right?
Okay.
So you have two options, right? You can either disable the policy that checks image pull policy just for this like deployment to pods fail fast stuff, right? Or you can mock out this other webhook, this mutation webhook, by adding a mutator that only applies to the generated object, right? And it's only applying to the generated object because you don't want to disable, you don't want to like double mutate, right? And you don't want to disable that other mutation webhook because maybe it does other useful things. So yeah, those are your two modes of getting around that issue.
So there is the no mutation experience, and then there is the validating plus mutating experience. So yeah, so let's make that more clear. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, that took a while, but anything else on this? I know we have other stuff on the agenda, so if nothing else, Xander, you want to talk about KubeCon stuff?
Yeah, I've got just a couple of things to mention. First thing is Gator is now available on Brew. So you can brew install Gator. I'm working on a docs PR just to mention that as one of the installation methods. So that should be ready pretty soon. So that's thing number one. Thing number two is KubeCon stuff. So I was hoping, I don't know what the status of an OPA booth in the project showcase is or who's going to be staffing that, but I would love to be able to show the policy UI that Nilik worked on, just because I know that the project booths have TVs like ready to go. So that would be like a super awesome thing to be able to show and talk about. So if anyone knows like what the status on the project booth is, like definitely let me know. And then last thing is I would like to write a blog post for the Kubernetes blog to kind of show an end-to-end external data example, because trying to just get the word out there a little bit. And I've worked with the Kubernetes blog maintainers several times before, and they're like usually very open to content. So I think I'm gonna get a draft blog going for that, and I will just toss it in the Slack channel once I have that ready. And if anyone wants to contribute, super welcome to. And yeah, I think that's my rundown that I have for today.
Yeah, let's do it. Let me know if you have any questions.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, so I still don't know about the booth stuff for myself, so sorry.
No, that's fine. I know it's
ask-
always kind of like, yeah, in the air. Like it might be early too to be thinking about it, but I don't know.
We should ask Tim and Torin about that.
They are having a booth. I definitely know that. I just don't
Oh, no, the
know it.
details. Yeah.
Like if it's like who's at the booth, I just don't know if I'll even be able to go to KubeCon yet. Wish I
Peter
did.
might be a good person to reach out, Xander. Peter is the community manager for OPA.
Okay. Yeah, I know Peter actually.
You know Peter?
I think
Okay.
we met at the last KubeCon. Yeah.
Cool. But maybe we can start a list of things we want to show. I don't know, you mentioned the website, the external data, anything else? Gator, I think we should show off Gator again. That doesn't hurt. And this generator thing or expand, what are we calling it?
Generator
rejection of
Expanded
generated
thing? I don't know.
It's the GREs.
Oh my
I
God.
never went to grad school.
Good Lord.
we need an acronym or something.
But we like need a good name that all of us use, so it's consistent at least. What do you call it in the
Implied resource validation.
Early rejection of
early?
generator.
Yeah, that's a mouthful, man.
I mean, how do you succinctly describe that though? Like, yeah.
GitHub
You just come
Copilot
up with
for
powerful branding, like just pick a word and drop a vowel from it, and then just stick with that. Like,
Flash val, fastest validation.
Generator. Just kidding.
USB 10.
Oh no.
No, it's USB 10 version 3. The reference is there's a USB 4 version 2 now.
Early rejection of generator resources. Yeah, can we think a bit more on this name?
Hey, naming is hard.
Instaject.
Huh?
Instaject.
no soup for you.
this could be feature request for GitHub Copilot, suggesting names.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Oh, we need something that's a bit more intuitive, I think. Anyway. Anything else, Sander? No? Okay.
Nope.
All right. Last but not least. So I did talk to Max a bit about so in the past we talked about like the linked issue. It is one example of we've gotten requests from users who were asking about supporting other languages, right? For writing policies. So one thought we had was how do we enable the constraint frameworks so that it would support multi-language other than just OPA Rego. So we have a hackathon coming up at for Microsoft, I guess. It's a Microsoft hackathon coming up in September 19th, I think. So if y'all are interested, we could maybe do like a Zoom thing and just hack together for a couple of days. I put the sort of like the description in what we would like to accomplish. Again, is how do we support users to write cloud native policies, favorite programming language, and how do we, and perhaps WebAssembly is the answer for that. That allows us to create flexible, secure, and portable policies. Are y'all interested? What do you think? Questions? Okay.
You're on mute if you're talking.
Oh, I was just +1ing. I'm interested.
Okay. All right, I guess I will maybe start a doc with some logistics and then share with people here. Anyone, is everybody on the call interested or I guess I could just put it in the doc, and if anybody's interested, they can click on it and write their name to the thing, add their name to the thing. All right. Cool. I think that's it for the agenda. Anything else?
That was a good agenda. Lots of items.
Yeah. All right. If there's nothing else, you get 6 minutes back. All right. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.